Battle of the Brushstrokes. John Constable and J. M. W. Turner, two prominent 19th century English Romanticist landscape painters, was an ardent rival. Now, here I need to choose the correct fragment, and I'm speaking of two people, Constable and Turner. So my subject is dual, which makes it a plural subject. So I can't say was, I need to say were. And were ardent rivals, because this rivals will also need to be plural since I'm speaking of two people. So it can't be were an ardent rival. So B is the best answer. Turner believed that Constable's straightforward depictions of scenery lacked energy. Constable, meanwhile, felt that Turner's paintings, which represented nature in a more abstract way, were just steam and light. They had stylistic differences. These stylistic differences grew into personal animosity in 1831. Which choice best combines the underlined sentences? Growing into personal animosity, their differences were only stylistic until 1831. Their differences, stylistic until 1831, also grew into personal animosity. Despite stylistic differences, their personal animosity grew in 1831. In 1831, their stylistic differences grew into personal animosity. So this would be D. This is the most concise answer and maintains the active voice. So I already know that they had stylistic differences, and in 1831, those grew into personal animosity. Option A is not correct because the main concept of their differences growing into personal animosity has been placed as a modifier here. So this does not convey the meaning clearly. In option B, the problem is this word also. I could have said their differences stylistic until 1831 grew into personal animosity. So this also kind of distorts the meaning that I'm trying to say. So it's not B. And despite is a contrasting connector. And I'm not using a contrasting tone here. I'm saying that they already had stylistic differences and now they also had a personal animosity. So D. Appointed to oversee the arrangement of paintings for the annual Royal Academy exhibition, a prestigious London art show, Constable moved one of his rival's paintings from its central position and replaced it with one of his own. Turner was furious. Now, here I need to use the correct pronoun for one of his rival's paintings. So it would have to be its, its. Its apostrophe is not a word. It apostrophe s is it is, right? So that is not a pronoun. And there is a plural pronoun while I'm looking for the pronoun for a painting, so singular. So C is the answer. The conflict came to a head the following year as the two artists prepared to display new works side by side at the 1832 Royal Academy exhibition. Which choice provides the most relevant information to introduce the paragraph? So let's just read further and we'll come back to this. Constables, the opening of Waterloo Bridge depicted a grand public occasion with bright colors and detailed illustrations of officers and ships. Turner's Helvoetsy Lewis, by contrast, was a relatively sparse painting of windswept ships rendered in grays and whites. A few days before the exhibition's opening, as more than a dozen artists put final touches on their works, Turner eyed Constable's painting. Constable was adorning it with flecks of red paint. Okay, so I'm speaking of the conflict between them coming to a head the following year. And here I'm saying the two artists prepared to display new works side by side. And the paragraph tells me that yes, indeed, Constable's work, the opening of Waterloo Bridge, and Turner's Helvoetsy Lewis, they were both going to be displayed. So I like A. More than 100 works were being shown at the 1832 Royal Academy exhibition. So this does not talk about their works being side by side and how that led to the conflict. So not B. Artists presenting at the 1832 Royal Academy exhibition were limited to 8 works each. So this again talks about a requirement of exhibition, so does not address the two artists here. No work shown at the 1832 Royal Academy exhibition could have been previously shown in public. So this is similar to C in that it talks about a requirement to be exhibited, so not relevant to the two artists. Now, Constable's painting depicted a grand public occasion with bright colors, and Turner's, by contrast, was a relatively sparse painting. So I can use by contrast as a connector here because I'm speaking of bright colors and detailed illustrations, and I'm contrasting that with relatively sparse painting rendered in grays and whites. So I like option A. Furthermore is in addition when you give more information. So that's not correct because I'm comparing the paintings by the two artists. In fact is when you stress a point. So that wouldn't make sense because I'm introducing Turner's painting in this sentence. And ultimately is finally, so that also doesn't fit the context here. So A. A few days before the exhibition's opening, as more than a dozen artists put final touches on their works, Turner eyed Constable's painting. Constable was adorning it with flecks of red paint, right? So here I need to connect these two parts. So obviously the way it's written is not correct because if I say Turner eyed Constable's painting, then that is one sentence and Constable was adorning it is another sentence. So I can't join them with a comma. Turner eyed Constable's painting, which Constable was adorning. Now I don't need it here because I'm saying which, so I know I'm referring to the painting. So it's not B. Turner eyed Constable's painting, which Constable was adorning with flecks of red paint. This is correct because it conveys the meaning and has no grammatical inaccuracy. Turner eyed Constable's painting that it was being adorned. So that is definitely not correct. I can simply say that was being adorned by Constable with flecks. This it is wrong. So C. Grabbing his palette, Turner faced his own painting and put a glob of bright red paint about the size of a quarter in the center of the canvas, shaping it into a buoy with a few brief brushstrokes. Then, without a word, he left the gallery. He has been here and fired a gun, Constable remarked, aghast upon seeing Turner's last-minute addition. So what Turner did was that he went to Constable's painting and Constable was, giving it the final touches. And he then grabbed his palette and on his own painting, he put a glob of bright red paint. Remember that his painting was considered lifeless. So he put the size of a quarter, right? Now, the writer is considering deleting the underlined portion, adjusting the punctuation as needed. Now, I'm saying that he made a buoy with a few brief brushstrokes. Then, without a word, he left the gallery. He has been here and fired a gun, Constable remarked aghast upon seeing Turner's last-minute addition. So I want to keep that segment because Constable said he has been here and fired a gun, which is to say that he is no longer here and he did something that was dramatic. So I want to keep it kept because it provides a supporting detail that reinforces the abrupt nature of Turner's action. So this is a good answer because what he did to the canvas was abrupt and then quietly he left the gallery. So it reinforces that. Kept because it establishes that Turner avoided interacting with other artists. No, so that's not true. We don't know if he avoided interacting with other artists. We only know that in this particular case, he wanted to make a statement with his painting. So A. Constable's metaphor rang true. With just a single bright red dot, Turner not only dramatically altered his painting, but also dealt a blow to his adversary. Fellow painter C.R. Leslie observed that the prominent spot of red against the otherwise muted seascape ultimately perfected Helmholtz Lewis. At the same time, Turner's sparing use of color seemed to mock Constable's adjacent painting, which appeared cluttered and overworked by comparison. So here I need to decide the correct punctuation, and this is one sentence. Fellow painter observed that the prominent spot of red perfected Helmholtz Lewis. So this is one. At the same time, Turner's sparing use of color seemed to mock Constable's adjacent painting. So this is a second independent sentence, so I can't put a comma between them. And I definitely need a punctuation, so B is wrong. Okay, I can't have a colon because the second part at the same time is not explaining the first part, right? I'm kind of talking about the two paintings independently, so a colon doesn't make sense. A semicolon is the best answer. It acts as a period in this case, joining two independent sentences. What a piece of plaster it is, one art critic capturing the public sentiment remarked of the opening of Waterloo Bridge. Though Constable's reputation survived the incident, Turner's headline-making stunt stole the show, attracting crowds of an enormous nature, eager to judge the painting's merits for themselves. Now, crowds of an enormous nature, large crowds, tons of people, so many people, right? So the best answer would be option B, because large crowds conveys the size of the crowds and it's concise. Crowds of an enormous nature is too long and uses too many words. And tons of people and so many people, these are rather informal, when I can simply say large crowds, which is a formal, concise expression. So B. Attracting large crowds eager to judge the painting's merits for themselves. So here I'm talking about the two paintings. So I'm talking about paintings as possessive and plural possessive. So the apostrophe will come after S when it's plural possessive. So paintings merits. So C is the best answer. Paintings and paintings A and D are wrong because they don't use possessive with paintings. And B is wrong because this is singular possessive. So that's not correct. As the public debated whether Turner or Constable better captured the spirit of natural scenery, the older neoclassical style, which favored historical themes, soon fell out of fashion. Thus, landscape painting quickly displaced neoclassical painting as the most popular form of visual art. The writer wants a conclusion that reflects the main idea of the passage and emphasizes the effects of the painter's rivalry. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? Despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, these two rivals jointly influenced the popular taste for landscape painting. Art exhibits became a popular destination for both locals and tourists in 19th century England. Art critics today continue to debate whether Constable or Turner was the more accomplished artist. So this would be B, right? I need to conclude the passage with a summary of what the passage discussed and then also talk about the fact that the older neoclassical style fell out of fashion. So despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, why perhaps because of them? Because it was due to their differences that this incident happened, what Turner did, and that led to this great scandal, which ultimately led to more discussions of landscape paintings and landscape paintings becoming more popular. So B captures that. Option A does not talk about the artist's conflicts or the artist's rivalry at all, so it can't be the right answer. Option C also does not talk about the artist's rivalry. And option D talks about art critics continuing to debate who was the more accomplished artist today. But that's not relevant because one, it does not talk about what we have discussed in the previous sentence, which is how landscape painting became popular. And it also doesn't talk about their rivalry, the main focus of the passage and how that rivalry led to the popularity of landscape painting. So B is the best answer. Okay, let's grade this. B, D, C, double A, B, D, C, A, and C, A, D, B, C, B. C, A, D, B, C, B. Okay, great. We got all correct.